Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post. DOGE just had a major win at the Supreme Court. DOGE is involved in a number of cases at the Supreme Court, but this win protects DOGE from having to turn over all of its internal structure and documents to an outside agitator who's trying to ruin DOGE inside the government. Norm Eisen and his crew, who have been responsible for untold amounts of lawfare against Trump, against DOGE, against the administration, has been pushing to get access to every internal document that they can possibly get their hands on. They did a FOIA request, which would be appropriate to get access to information of what's going on inside a U.S. agency. But DOGE, unlike, say, the Department of Justice, is not an independent agency that makes its own decisions. It only advises the president. It advises other agencies. They don't make the decision when people are fired or when they cancel a contract. Those decisions are made inside those agencies. And as a result, all the activity that's going on inside of DOGE, almost all of it is protected because it is advice to the president or advice to the rest of the administration. If they were to lose this case, though, DOGE would be turned upside down. So far, this is a temporary win, but it's a very significant win. And it looks like it's going to be a permanent win. Coming from Courthouse News Service, DOGE wins Supreme Court shield blocking records release to watchdog. And from the Washington Post, Chief Justice temporarily blocks access to DOGE records in FOIA suit. Norm Eisen's Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington filed a Freedom of Information request seeking details about DOGE's secretive operations. People have also been misunderstanding because Elon Musk is not continuing as a special government employee. He's not leaving DOGE, and DOGE isn't falling apart. All of his people are in place, and DOGE has people in every major agency. Elon Musk, while he's not going to be in Washington as much and in front of the cameras and doing interviews, is very much going to stay involved with DOGE. From the American prospect who does not like Elon Musk's fake retreat from DOGE. Despite the billionaire's nominally stepping back, his loyalists remain in control of the group. And from Wired, DOGE has achieved its final form. It may seem as though the worst excesses of DOGE have passed. The reality is the whole government is DOGE now. Wired also does not like DOGE. DOGE is actually doing a lot of important work. For example, from Newsweek, DOGE deactivates over 500,000 credit cards. These are credit cards held by federal employees. Some of the credit cards have very important and relevant purchases on them. Other credit cards have UFC fights, trips to Las Vegas, all kinds of charges that ought not to be there. And this isn't just about federal workers. Anybody gets a card from their employer, there can be abuse with the charges and the spending. But who at the federal government is really responsible for making sure that doesn't happen? And then, if necessary, if there are inappropriate charges, taking action against the employees. Well, nobody essentially was. Or if they were, they weren't taking it that seriously. So DOGE came in and deactivated credit cards and reduced numbers to limits of like $1 in spending on a credit card, which makes it worthless. DOGE has also identified many people on Social Security, or at least with records marked alive, where they're 120 years or older. And finally, they're starting to take some of the people out of the database or mark them at least as not alive anymore if they're marked as 120 years or older. From Fox Business, Social Security conducting major records cleanup, marking 7 million listed as age 120 years or older as deceased, which means they can't be listed as voters somewhere, or not as easily. They can't get Social Security benefits or other benefits if people are using those Social Security numbers, pretending to be alive and pretending to be that person, using their identity, but they're not really that person. And this number could be as high as 12 million people. From Newsweek, Social Security lists over 12 million people as dead. Ultimately, DOGE is using AI inside the government extensively. And it's that use of AI that's going to find and correct a massive number of problems that we can't even imagine. It's also going to scare people and discourage them from taking advantage of their position in the federal government in an illegal or inappropriate way because AI is watching. From Reuters, DOGE expanding Grok AI in U.S. government is raising conflict concerns. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts temporarily blocked a government watchdog group from obtaining records from the Trump administration's cost-cutting U.S. DOGE service, whose inner workings have largely been shielded from public view. And that is because the inner workings have been in flux, they've been bringing people on, they've been expanding, and primarily because they advise the president. They advise the heads of departments. As an advisory group, they're not subject to FOIA. The brief administrative stay issued Friday will give the court more time to consider the underlying issues. That's the lower court. The Supreme Court is telling the lower court, excuse me, you can't just rip apart the agency and give everything over to Norm Eisen. You've got to go through the case and try to determine, do they have a right to this information? Because the trick Norm Eisen was trying to pull was to say, well, they didn't give me the FOIA request. They're claiming my FOIA request is inappropriate because they're advisors. So how about you just give me discovery in this lawsuit immediately and let me go through all their papers, and then we can determine whether or not they're decision makers or they're just advisors to the federal government agencies. Well, of course, what that was doing was creating a workaround situation where all of DOGE's information would be released, and those are not for public use. And the advising they've been doing and correspondence advising other agencies within the federal government is not for FOIA release. It's work product. It's like an attorney's work product. Trump officials asked the High Court to block a judge's order requiring DOGE's administrator, Amy Gleason, to give a deposition and disclose details about its operations. Norm Eisen's crew operation, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, filed a Freedom of Information request seeking details about DOGE's secretive operations. I'd like to see what's going on at Crew's secretive operations, but it's none of my business because it's not available to the public. And neither is DOGE's secretive operations. Trump officials rebuffed that request, saying that DOGE was a presidential advisory board, not a government agency, so it was not subject to disclosure laws. Crew then sued to obtain the information. The lawsuit argued that DOGE, which stands for Department of Government Efficiency, was wielding government power far beyond its limited legal mandate without meaningful oversight or transparency. Crew is seeking a range of documents, including communications among DOGE administrators and staff, organizational charts, ethics pledges, and financial disclosures. DOGE swept through the federal government by order of the president in the opening months of Trump's second term, initiating mass layoffs, shuttering agencies, and killing programs as part of billionaire Elon Musk's push to vastly shrink the workforce, which was all pursuant to executive order from the President of the United States. The disruption has prompted nearly 36 lawsuits against DOGE, including a handful like Crew's that argue that the public should have greater visibility into who is working for it and how it operates. Of course, they want to identify all these people so they can attack all these people privately, and it's the only conclusion you can come to. These are the same groups of people that get together and plan out these protests and what seems to be pretty aggressive actions against Teslas and Tesla owners and Tesla dealerships, creating violence. So why would you expose all of these people publicly and put them at risk just because they're serving the government? The argument is not with the DOGE employees. The argument is with the federal government. Does the president have the right to do what he's ordered the DOGE people to do? Also, the DOGE people are not making decisions on their own. It's the head of the agencies that ultimately make the decision of whether or not they want to let people go or not let people go or reorganize. All DOGE is there to do is to collect information and make intelligent recommendations backed up by data. That's it. And already, many government agencies already have DOGE people as employees of those government agencies. So it's not like DOGE sends people over from the DOGE department to the Treasury or to Social Security and tells those people what to do. Employees are vetted, and then they join each of the individual departments if and only if the head of those departments wants DOGE at those departments. DOGE has been cagey about its leadership and employees' names in the past because the people that have issues with DOGE are looking to stop DOGE from doing things and advising the president any way that they can. So targeting people personally, attacking people personally, that's all these guys seem to do. So of course they don't want to be identified and subject themselves to nonstop attacks from crazy people. Critics have targeted DOGE for allowing staff to use encrypted messaging apps for official communications, which has raised questions about record keeping and transparency. DOGE has also sought access to sensitive data at a number of agencies, raising additional concerns. The access to the data that they're looking for is the evidence so they can audit what's been going on. at agencies and also make sure that people that are receiving benefits, money, resources from the federal government are entitled to actually receive those things. There's a massive amount of fraud, waste, and abuse that goes on because the federal government has been something that way too many people have had easy access to. The most shocking thing from DOGE so far, well, there are probably two for me. One, that the Treasury just sends out money whenever it's requested from any agency within the government without checking to see, like, is this a legitimate payment or not? They were supposed to check on that, but the Treasury was not checking on that because apparently somebody very high up said, don't check that. Let us send out money any which way we want to. Even just not recording what payments were for when they were being sent out. DOGE fixed all of that. And the second thing that's the most shocking was when Elon Musk recently said in an interview, oh yeah, there are 100,000 employees who work for the federal government currently who've been taking unemployment insurance payments. They're not supposed to do that if they're working for the federal government. Hopefully we get to the bottom of that one because that is completely crazy. That's against the law. A federal judge determined in March that DOGE was probably subject to disclosure laws and ordered DOGE to hand over records, saying it operated with unusual secrecy. DOGE attorneys, and they do have some very good attorneys, countered by asking the court to find it was not subject to FOIA laws for the reasons it has previously laid out. A judge then ruled that Crew, that's Norm Eisen's operation, could get access to internal DOGE documents to ascertain whether DOGE met the definition of an agency. So they would just do a workaround. So we're not going to give you the documents because we can't give you the documents. We're not an agency. Oh, okay, fine. Why don't you just give us the documents and we'll call it discovery? Well, then you're working around the laws and the rules that say you're not entitled to those documents. So that can't actually happen. If you accuse someone of something, you have to be able to prove that. You can't just say like, well, I'm going to accuse you of this. We'll just take my word for granted. And you could run roughshod and rummage through all the federal government's private information that is not public to people outside the federal government like Norm Eisen. And when it comes to DOGE auditing information and having access to private information within the federal government, as a lot of people have complained about, DOGE is actually in the federal government doing something for the federal government. The people that are complaining about it are not in the federal government. People like Norm Eisen. Norm Eisen has a problem with it because NGOs and his friends in Washington are being exposed for receiving payments, monies, and opportunities and resources that they're not supposed to be getting. At least that's my take on it. DOGE quickly appealed the ruling to a court of appeals and then the Supreme Court on an emergency basis. Solicitor General John Sauer told the High Court that the judge's order was a violation of the separation of powers. Quote, the district court ordered USDS, that's DOGE, to submit to a sweeping intrusive discovery just to determine if USDS, that's DOGE, is subject to FOIA in the first place, Sauer wrote. Quote, that order turns FOIA on its head, effectively giving respondent a win on the merits of its FOIA suit under the guise of figuring out whether FOIA even applies. Let's not get this wrong. It's a brilliant legal argument to create a lawsuit over a FOIA and to say, well, I need to get all of those records because of my lawsuit to determine if legitimately I had a right to ask for that FOIA. These are very clever lawyers who are trying to take down DOGE. But fortunately, DOGE does have some good lawyers themselves. Just because people are looking to do things that are very selfish and aren't good for the government, aren't good for the people, it doesn't mean they're not brilliant. It doesn't mean they're not clever. And the Norm Eisen people, Norm included, are brilliant and they are clever. It's a good thing they're losing here. Norm Eisen's crew said, allowing the president to create a government body with such sweeping powers that was not subject to FOIA would, quote, give the president free rein to create new executive office of the president entities that functionally wield substantial independent authority but are exempt from critical transparency laws. Except for the fact that these entities have no authority, all they're doing is taking actions on behalf of the president. What is the president supposed to go in and physically check computers on his own and maybe go through that data by himself? Is he supposed to go in and wrangle with everybody in every federal office himself? He can't delegate that authority to research and collect information from federal agencies he's responsible for. It's ridiculous. It would be one thing if DOGE really had the authority to tell individual departments and agencies, okay, look, you need to reduce 40% of your staff. You need to cut these programs. And we're acting here on our own authority, not under the authority of the president. If they're acting under the authority of the president, then DOGE has no independent authority. They only have the authority to follow orders from the president. Separately, the Supreme Court is also weighing whether DOGE representatives can continue to access data on some 70 million Americans at the Social Security Administration. A lower court blocked DOGE's access after finding the move appeared to violate privacy laws. And that's because the last thing that people who are apparently doing strange things with our Social Security money and doing unusual things, passing out Social Security numbers to people that are not citizens, or very freely allowing Social Security numbers to be passed out left, right, and center, those people doing those things don't want people with artificial intelligence and very high IQs checking their work. And if I were them, of course, I would not want that either. Earlier this week, a federal judge blocked DOGE's efforts to dismantle the U.S. Institute of Peace, saying the president did not have the authority to unilaterally disband an agency that was created by Congress. It's not an agency, it's a nonprofit. And yes, a judge who is often overturned by the Supreme Court or by appeals courts did make that ruling. Her ruling made no sense, and it's going to be overturned. Musk announced last month that he would be stepping back from his work at DOGE to spend more time at Tesla, his electric vehicle company. His role with DOGE drew intense backlash, and Tesla stock dropped more than 70% in the first quarter of the year. I like looking at critical articles so I don't become overly optimistic about what the potential is for DOGE. The American prospect does not like Elon Musk, and they do not like DOGE. And they're correct. Elon Musk leaving DOGE is a fake retreat. He's going to still stay involved. He's the CEO of several very large companies. The way he operates is he gets something going, and then he steps back, and then stays in contact with his people who are running his operations. If you look into Elon Musk, you can find this out. Usually, he'll visit each of his companies once a week, find out what their biggest problem is, and then work with them on their biggest problem. That's how he keeps up with everything. He's not involved in the details of every company and everything those companies are doing. And as Wired has said, DOGE has achieved its final form. The reality is, the whole government is DOGE now.